Hey everybody, welcome back to the Chad and Sam Sports Hour. I'm Sam Mullen here with Chad Train. We're going to be breaking down our third of 6 divisions. We're going with the AL West today, Chad. I'm excited about this one. How are you feeling?
It's going to be a good one. Second season with the Houston Astros in the division. We'll see how they do. That's what we're getting, though. Starting in Houston, rough. That's the one word that comes to mind to describe the Astros the past couple years. But there's some optimism. They didn't have any big, outstanding moves, but they had some moves that could definitely help them. Dexter Fowler, acquiring him from the Colorado Rockies, he's a good presence up leading off, can provide some power in Minute Maid Park. Then you also have starting pitcher Scott Feldman, a good addition to their rotation.
Yeah, I really like the acquisition of Dexter Fowler. Trading Jason Lyles to get him, maybe not exactly what they were looking for, but this is a guy that will do well in center field for them. And I think another thing to look at is that hill that they have in center field. If the ball gets caught up there, Dexter Fowler's scoring on that play. If he hits it up there, he's got, like you said, he's got some pop. If he can get it over the short left field fence, while it is high up, he's got the pop to do that. I think it's an under the radar move that I'm surprised more teams weren't looking into this, because he really wasn't. They really didn't have to give up much to get him.
I mean, personally, when I look at the deal, I see it as a win-win situation for both teams. You have Dexter Fowler, who is a good offensive upgrade to the Houston offense, and they didn't really have to give up too much. Colorado able to bring in a young pitcher because they're trying to rebuild their starting rotation. They're young as well, so it helps them on both ends. One thing I am interested to see is how Dexter Fowler plays in Minute Maid. He has a short left field, could increase his homers a little, but you also have the deep center field, right field. Will the balls be able to fall into the gap? What is his average going to be? Because he played in Colorado, which is a huge hitter's park, and he still wasn't outstanding in Colorado. It wasn't like he was hitting 280, 290. He was hitting like 260s, maybe 270s. So that's something that you got to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think one thing that we're definitely going to have to look at this year is staying in the outfield for the Houston Astros. Look at a prospect like maybe George Springer. We could be seeing him up in the majors this year, and they talk about his power and how dangerous he can be as a power hitter. Not to mention that he does have a little bit of speed. He can steal some bases for him. This could be a guy that is around for a very, very long time that they can build this team up with. Because the last time they really had a guy that they built around, that they brought up through their system, Greg Biggio, Bagwell. You could even say Berkman in the early 2000s. But they really haven't had that kind of core for probably 7-8 years now. And it's definitely shown with their lack of success. The only time I can remember them having really any success was when they went to the 2005 World Series, that they ended up, I believe, getting swept by the White Sox. They just haven't seen very much success since then. And this is a team that's just really been a basement dweller for a long time. And I just don't mean in whatever division they've played in. I'm talking about in the entire league. The last 2 years, they've been the worst team in Major League Baseball based on record. One other loss that they have is Carlos Pena, who played a little first base DH combo for them. Really known for his power, but he didn't show it last year. Something that, again, we're talking about Dexter Fowler has a little bit of power. If Carlos Pena didn't show it, I would be a little surprised if Dexter Fowler can do that.
Well, a couple things. You talked about Houston not really being successful producing a winning season or anything close to it since the 2005 season when they went to the World Series. And you have to think about the core that their team was built around at that point. You had Roger Clemens, who still had years left. You had Andy Pettitte, who is producing well for you. Then you had Biggio, Berkman, and Bagwell.
Don't forget Roy Oswalt. Brad Lidge was on that team.
And Ausmus. You had a solid group of players. But the problem with Houston Astros is they don't have an identity. because they don't have that star player, that face of the franchise per se, because they've moved on. Berkman's moved on. He's finally retired. He had a good career with Houston. He had a good career overall. But now you have these people, like you mentioned. What we're going to want to look for and look at are their prospects. George Springer had a great year. Was almost a 40-40 player in the minors between two levels. He had 43 home runs, I believe. He had 40 home runs, I believe, and like 37 stolen bases.
I think George Springer is going to be an exciting name to watch. They do have their long-term catcher, Jason Castro. They really, really like him, and it's hard not to. He's shown that he can be potentially maybe a face of this franchise because he'll stick around, hopefully for their sake, because the last couple of guys that they've had that they thought were going to stick around for a long time, you look at Carlos Lee, Hunter Pence. These guys, they ended up shipping these guys off. They even had Miguel Tejada for a little while.
He won the home run derby when he was with them.
Exactly, and then Jeff Kent it came around at the end of his career. They were trying to bring in some of these guys to try and spice up this franchise, and it just hasn't worked for them. I think we can hopefully agree on the fact that this is going to take working from the bottom, working their way up, and it takes a little bit of time. But we've seen success with other teams doing that. It doesn't mean that the Houston Astros can't do that either, but eventually they have to make a run for it.
Exactly, and the one thing that I would tell Houston fans and Astros fans is that the way they're building their team is just like the Tampa Bay Rays. They're going within their organization. They understand that they don't have the dollars to go out and buy those top-tier free agents. So they're building within. They're doing trades here and there to get players, but trades that are smart, that aren't selling their farm system. So you have to keep in mind Tampa Bay. They were the laughingstock for a while, being the Devil Rays. And now recently, their farm system has come to fruition. You're seeing these star players make it to the majors. You're seeing Hellickson, all these young players produce at good rates that are helping their team. Eventually led the Rays to a World Series appearance.
And we're looking to see if the Astros can be a team like the Rays. Obviously, like I said, they have not done well the last couple of years. 2012, 55 and 107, very very much a struggle for them, and that's sixth place in the NL Central. That was back when they were in the National League. 2013, they moved over to the American League West. They actually decreased their number of wins. They go 51 and 111 for fifth place in the AL West. What do you expect to see from them going into 2014?
2014, you ache sometimes because you don't. It hurts you seeing a team repetitively produce so horribly, and you just wish that they get a break. But I don't see that coming yet. I think they're a couple more years away, a couple moves here and there to really, one, build their farm system more, and then get more time for these younger players. I see them going 65 and 97.
I'm pretty much right there with you. I think they're definitely going to improve. Getting 50 wins in a season is almost hard to do to be that that bad, and I think they're going to have an improvement. But don't look out for them to be in the running for anything. They're still going to be. I still have them at 63 and 99, and potentially another year as the worst team in Major League Baseball.
I mean, and the next team, Houston, Texas. Supposedly everything's bigger in Texas, but the attention that Seattle has brought to themselves by going out and signing Robinson Cano to a huge deal, stealing them away from the evil empire that is the Yankees, that was a shock to everyone because you don't see that happen, and they dared to toe the line with the Yankees, and they won. They have been a solid offseason that have had quiet moves, but very impactful moves.
You said Robinson Cano, and that is one that has to be looked at because Robinson Cano, for the Yankees, was a number 3 hitter. He was able to bat about 300. hit 30 home runs, bring in over 100 guys. That's what Seattle wants him to be. They want him to be their reliable centerpiece to this offense. And while he's not going to win Gold Gloves for this team, he's not going to hurt you that much defensively. He's still going to do his job. He's going to be the cornerstone of this team, at least on the offensive side, for a long time. Hopefully, from Seattle's case, hopefully cornerstone with Felix Hernandez. If they can have these guys around together for a long time, they have a chance to really make a move in this division. Another great move, in my opinion, Fernando Rodney. They bring in a closer that they feel, and I think I would say I feel the same way, that is a surefire, going to lock up your ninth inning for hopefully about 40 saves every year. That, I think, is a move that may have really gone under the radar.
I mean, it was definitely a steal. I kept track of all these different moves throughout the offseason, and I was shocked. I'm just sitting here watching all these teams pass on him. I'm like, Fernando Rodney, you can get him cheap. And they got him fairly cheap. It was a good bargain steal of a move. I wouldn't necessarily call it a Johnny Gomes move, per se, talking about how the Reds got him on a minor league deal a couple years ago, and from there how well he produced. But relatively speaking, for the production that he put out there, it was a pretty solid steal. I think it was 2 years, $14 million. I mean, that's great for a top tier closer. The other addition you have to look at too is Logan Morrison. Will he be? He's never been a great contact hitter, but this is a meager Mariners offense. They could use all the help they can get. Robinson Cano is a huge help. Logan Morrison, another help. Hopefully he can come in. If he comes in with average production, that's a step up, because you have other players that they have. Corey Hart, a roll of the dice, coming off a season where he missed the entire season, I believe, because he had both his knees, had an operation on both of his knees. That's weary, but if they can get the Corey Hart of Milwaukee, where he was producing 24 or so homers, I mean, they're not going to be mad about that at all.
I'm 100% with you. I think one thing I don't know if you want to say they're testing out, but one thing that I think they're looking to do is they took a gamble last year signing Michael Morse and Kendra Morales, which are really both first basemen, but they moved Morse to the outfield, and they tried to work with that. Injuries really kind of made that a headache for them. But I think it's another, again, like you said, a roll of the dice where they're thinking, well, if we can get these guys, maybe for a little less money than we got Morrison and Morales, but potentially we can get the production that we wanted last year out of those two, out of these guys. That's what they're looking for. It could be, I don't want to necessarily say a make or break, but that could be a big difference in this team, because you do have to be confident that Kyle Seager is going to have another solid year for them.
That Ackley will eventually bloom into what the Mariners had hoped to see come out of him. I mean, and Justin Smoke, despite what the stats may say in terms of batting average, he had an improvement of a year. He batted 24 homers, which is an improvement. It showed his power. But contact, not everyone's going to have is a contact hitter. That's something you got to work on in the batting cages. And, there's rarely a team, you're not going to have a team made of all contact hitters. And they have to find that balance between guys they know that can get on base and hit for contact, and guys that can drive in runs with power.
Yeah, and I think one thing that, we talked about Felix Hernandez before, and this guy is really the face of the Seattle Mariners. Can he get help this year? He had his teammate Iwakuma had a really good year for them. But they lost Jason Vargas, and that was a guy that had a good year for a starting rotation that really needed some extra help. Is a loss like that, while he was a little bit older, is a loss like that going to hurt them and make this pitching staff a little bit weaker? And because they obviously took care of potential offensive issues, but pitching wise, I mean, we've seen how teams can really lose progress that they can make because of a weak pitching staff.
I mean, one thing, yeah, they lose Jason Vargas, and it's a loss. I mean, it's a loss. I don't see it as a huge loss. They have Taijuan Walker, our top pitching prospect, coming up. He did make appearances in Seattle last year. He pitched 3 games, went 15 innings, gave up 11 hits, only walked 4, struck out 12, was 1-0 with a 3.6 ERA. That's decent. But going back to the hitting for a second, one thing we got to keep in mind too, and I believe it might be this year, or it's next year, but they have made dimension changes to Safeco Park, bringing some of the walls in. That could have some effect. I'm not saying that a guy that had 10 homers last year is going to belt 25 homers this year, but there's these different factors that you want to keep on your radar when you see some of these potential bursts of offense. Say, you know what, maybe that was the right move for them to do.
We really feel that could help a very meager offense, but I think the biggest question mark with this team is just how much will Cano affect this team in a positive direction. Obviously, he's going to help this team, but how much is he going to help this team? Because the fact is, this is still a tough division. You still have 3 teams that people look to as potential playoff teams from this division. They're and the M's are looking to make a jump. They haven't seen a winning season the last couple of years. 2012, 75 and 87 for fourth in the division. 2013, they regressed some, 71 and 91 again for fourth in the division. And I should say with 2012, that's last place in their division because they didn't have the Astros yet.
Their last winning season was in 2009 when they had 85 wins.
They're definitely looking to try and get back to those old ways, and they're hoping that Robinson Cano may be that little fuel to the fire for them. Chad, do you think he's going to be?
I think Robinson Cano could potentially, I'm not putting him in the same category as Joey Votto, but could potentially have the same impact that Joey Votto has on the Reds lineup in the sense of he could draw walks, he could force the pitchers to pitch at the people in front or behind him so they can get the guys out before they get to him. So if they do give up a homer, it'd be a solo homer, brush it off, next batter. So there's those things that you need to you look out for. I think that's where he's going to have the impact is strategy and how the pitchers are going to pitch to him. How are they going to pitch to the guys around him, in front of him and behind him?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you there. He's definitely going to help his teammates see more pitches because they definitely do not want to put guys on base for Robinson Cano. He will make them pay. Unfortunately, in my mind, they're still not a winning team this year. They will take a step in the positive direction. I have them going 77 and 85, but they still have some work to do in my mind, both on the pitching staff and a few more bats would definitely help them.
Yeah, I mean, I have them going 79 and 83, and this is the huge reason why. We talked about the Mariners' meager offense. But think about the opponents they're facing in this division. Yu Darvish. You have what we're going to talk about later in the show, the revamped Oakland A's bullpen, which has added a lot of star players. I mean, your offense is going to have to buck up and say, hey, we need to get the job done because these pitchers aren't AAA people. These are Major League pitchers, and we're playing against the best. We need to play our best, and we need to come to the table and prove why we are worthy of being here in the majors. And their offense hasn't shown that recently.
I think we'll see improvement. They have some more steps to take before they really reach the dangerous level that we see with the LA Angels. They have their star, Mike Trout, already. Now they have to find the guys that'll work around them. They had the big deals a couple years ago with C.J. Wilson and Albert Pujols, and they haven't exactly panned out the way that they want. So they're really trying to make maybe some smaller moves that may whether they free up cap space or allow prospects the chance to get in. Their biggest move, I believe, of the offseason, in my mind, was the trade where they acquired David Freese, a former World Series MVP from the St. Louis Cardinals, in exchange for Peter Bourjos, their speed demon of an outfielder, which may open up some chance for Mike Trout to stay in center field, which defensively is definitely helpful for them. And it's an upgrade at third base for them because they really didn't have an everyday guy there. They were trying to get Mark Trumbo to be a third baseman for him. He's now gone. He went to Arizona. That experiment really didn't work for them. So it probably was a good move to let him go.
And you talked about David Freese as one of the bigger moves that you saw and you looked at. The move that interested me the most, I wouldn't call it the biggest move. I think the David Freese move was good. I think the Joe Smith move was good to improve their bullpen. But Raul Ibanez, he's 41 years old, but as a 40-year-old last year, he swatted 29 homers, I believe.
I believe that was with the Seattle Mariners, too.
And, I mean, that's unbelievable. You don't see that out of a 40-year-old guy. Look at Jason Giambi, who's still milking every last at bat. He hasn't retired yet, but he's not out there swatting 29 homers.
I see what you're saying because that is very, very impressive. But Raul Ibanez, can he play defense for them? Because I don't see him as being a DH for this team. Where else are you going to put him? You're going to play him in the outfield. I mean, you're taking a huge risk if that's where you're going to go with it. Because the other move that they made that would potentially prevent Ibanez from being a DH is the signing of Carlos Pena. Carlos Pena, they want some power from him, but he's not playing first base. That's Albert Pujols. Albert Pujols is a Gold Glove for first baseman, so they're certainly not going to move him. And Carlos Pena isn't going to be able to play any other position. So Ibanez is stuck in the outfield. I don't see that being enough of a help. He's going to be too much of a liability defensively to make his worth, to get enough at-bats to show that he can hit another 29 home runs.
I mean, I totally agree. Those questions do come into play. Then you also remind yourself, they signed Raul Ibanez. They signed these players with a vision in their minds of what they hope to get out of them, where they plan to play them. So these are things that we'll find out as the season starts. Subtractions, though. Really, they didn't lose that much. They didn't lose much in numbers. They lost a good amount in offense with the loss of Mark Trumbo being shipped to Arizona. And I thought it was a good move. I'm interested in seeing how he does in Arizona. Change of scenery, new stadium. What do you think this offense will look like without him in the lineup now?
Well, I mean, you definitely have to look at not just the offensive lineup, but you look at the defensive lineup because they were really struggling to find a place for him. And that's I think why he needed to be shipped off. Well, now they don't have to worry about that. They can work with it a little bit more. They have an everyday third baseman in David Freese, something that Trumbo wasn't able to do. And Mike Trout, again, he's still going to be the centerpiece. But you may see him moved around in the lineup because while he still should be their leadoff hitter because he has speed, you may see him moved over to batting third and have Pujols bat right behind him because Mike Trout can still hit some nice doubles and home runs to hit in a guy like Eric Ibar at shortstop. There's a lot you can do with Mike Trout because of his versatility and the fact that he's dangerous at any point in the lineup.
I mean, you talk about a 1-2 punch with if you played Mike Trout either in front of or behind Albert Pujols. It brings up the question of it brings up the situation of pick your poison. Are you going to pitch to Trout and risk what could happen there? Do you walk him and then pitch to Pujols? Personally, personally, I think if I were a pitcher, based on last season, I would pitch around Trout and take my chances with Pujols because
You couldn't
Pujols,
say that in the past. I
you
mean,
couldn't, but Pujols is starting to show regression in his production, health, getting old, and last season was kind of a glimpse of reality of he's not the player he used to be, and that is why making these investments in these 10-year deals can be and these bigger deals can be very risky because you don't know how fast players are going to decline and how fast the game is going to wear on their body, and then you're left 4 years left in the deal, and he's only a shell of the player he used to be.
and you still have to pay him that $20+ million a year. And you talk about health. One thing that I look at is just the health of this rotation. Jared Weaver has, unfortunately, because as a baseball fan, you want to see Jared Weaver pitch. That guy has nothing but talent, and he has not been able to really stay healthy for the last couple of years. And he's their number one guy. Like he's earned that right to be the number one guy. If he can, if he can stay healthy, that is going to be a huge dividend to this team. One thing that we have to look at is the loss of Tommy Hanson as a starting pitcher. While I wouldn't say he had any great year with them because he was traded before last season to them from the Atlanta Braves. He was good with the Atlanta Braves. So if he had been able to be what they wanted, he would have been a third guy that is dangerous. I don't know if I'd put him as a number 2 or number 1, but as a number 3, you're looking at a good pitcher right there. Right now, I really only see 2 players in that rotation that are going to consistently give you production as long as they're healthy. And that would be Jared Weaver and C.J. Wilson. Past that, you're looking at some question marks. They're just young. They need they need a chance to really prove their worth and show that they can take this team back into the playoffs. And then I think the other thing that we have to look at this season is Mike Trout's possible extension because the raise that he got was only up to $1 million. And Mike Trout is looking to get paid $20 to $25 million a year.
Well, it goes back to the Indians that we talked about. Their ace,
Justin Masterson.
Masterson, yeah, they signed him to a deal to avoid arbitration. It's just like using the franchise tag in the NFL buys you time. The difference between the situations with the Indians and the Angels is the Angels, I believe, are so set, and they know he is going to be the face of the Angels. They have a plan to make him the face, and before he even signed it, they signed it just to get it done. They were having talks about a possible 6-year extension. So it's a matter of getting the details together because that's the number I've always heard when I'm researching is 6 years, which is good because they don't want to go the 10 years because, like we said, you don't know how fast the player will digress. Granted, Trout's young, but it's a risk doing these longer deals.
No, you're absolutely right about that. And the thing with Mike Trout is a lot of his game is based off of speed. Speed is the first thing that really kind of goes away from a batter. If he loses that definitely will take things away. And I think the difference when we talk about Trout and Masterson is money. And I don't mean just money, what they're asking for. I mean, what can their team give them? Cleveland is not going to be able to give Masterson the amount of money that LA can give Trout. It's
Right.
just a difference in where they're located. And as simple as that, Mike Trout can get paid by the Angels. He will get paid by the Angels, and he'll be around the Los Angeles team for a very, very long time.
I mean, going back to Mike Trout for a second, we talk about Trout and his speed, and that's the key tool that he has. once that goes, this isn't bad necessarily. Once the speed goes, he's kind of like our Trumbo. He's a power hitter. He has more hit for contact, but it goes back to that. Going back to Arlington, we're going to Arlington now, though.
Well, I mean, before we do that, Chad, let's go ahead and talk about where we expect the Angels to be this year. 2012, they were 89 and 73, good for third in the division. A really strong record. Just couldn't pass up the two teams in front of them. 2013 definitely jumped back some, 78 and 84. Not what they were looking for out of this team. What are you thinking in 2014?
81 and 81. I feel that Mark Trumbo is a huge loss for their offense, and the offensive players that they brought in are depth. I don't see anyone really getting a legitimate starting playing time that will produce to Mark Trumbo.
You know, I'm a little bit different from you. I'm 82 and 80 for this team, and I think it's not so much the fact that their offense will just not be added enough. You know, they didn't add enough with it. It's just I just don't see them being healthy. That's been their downfall the last couple of years. Even when they finished 89 and 73, they choked away the division lead, if I remember correctly. So it's just a matter of trying to keep this team healthy, and I just don't see that as being something that will work in their favor. But we do jump to Arlington now, to the Texas Rangers, who have had quite an off-season, Chad.
Yeah. Fans in the stands on the first base side better watch out for those nachos because Prince Fielder's in town, and you know that was a great acquisition for him for the Rangers. And not only Prince Fielder, they acquired him in the trade that dealt away a face of the franchise in Ian Kinsler.
Well, and some of that is just because Michael Young was no longer around. But after that, I believe Ian Kinsler had the longest tenure with this team.
Mm-hmm.
It's a question of money in this deal because the reason that this deal was made was to save Detroit some money. You know what Prince Fielder can bring as a power bat. But how long, because he was signed to a 10-year deal just 2 years ago, so he has 8 years left on this contract. How long before you start to see those power numbers just dwindle down and down and down because he's not helpful defensively. He's not giving you any defensive, any defensive prowess. Is this deal going to work not just this year? Because I believe this year
down the road.
I believe this year Prince Fielder is going to be the Texas Rangers will win the Prince Fielder Ian Kinsler deal. But once you get into year 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, who wins this deal? That's the big question mark. Looking just at this season, though, like I said, I think Prince Fielder, big help for them.
I mean, this offseason, looking at their additions, couldn't be any one-sided to offense. Prince Fielder, big star power bat. Shin-Soo Choo, coming from the Reds, picking him up as a free agent, did unbelievable for the Reds.
He's going to be getting on base in front of Prince Fielder, and that's what they want. They want a guy who's going to be consistently getting on base for them to have Prince Fielder just, even if it's a nice sacrifice fly, get a run across because we know that they have some pitching already. That's what they needed to really look at that offense.
I mean, besides Chu, brought in Tommy Hanson from the Angels. Short, adds depth, not a wow factor. But going back to the offense, though, picked up a steal in JP Arencibia. I think he can do good as a backup catcher. I think that's what they're going to do with him. They're going to still give it to Giovanni Soto. Questionable. They're both not outstanding production. Arencibia is a pure power hitter. His average is not. He's a 224 hitter with usually 21 home runs.
This will be a platoon position for him. I definitely would agree with that. But if they can get production out of Arencibia where he starts to hit, even if it's just up to 250, 260, if he's still going to bring the same power numbers, that kind of improvement where you're talking about 50 more hits in a season, that's huge for them. They will. You may see him creep into the starting lineup more and more as long as he gets along with the pitching staff.
And you also have to wonder when you have these moves is how much the new change of scenery has on their statistics. Whether it's like this new change of scenery helps JP and that his stats improve because he's out of the Rogers Center and into ballpark in Arlington. So the last addition they had, Adam Rosales, pure depth guy. He's a gritty guy. He tries his all. Nothing special, but he does what he needs to do.
Former Red, I always enjoyed watching him just because I am a guy who appreciates effort. But I do agree that he's not going to be anything, to wow this offense. But every 3-4 days, if he needs to come in, or even if it's just a pinch hit situation, you can potentially get something out of him. They do have some losses though. We already talked about Ian Kinsler. They lost Nelson Cruz. That was really the cornerstone of their offense last year, being with the loss of Josh Hamilton the year before, and they let Michael Young go. This was the guy that they were really relying on to drive in runs. And then they had A.J. Pierzynski that they signed to a 1-year deal last year. He's gone. Nathan's gone. He went to Detroit. And then David Murphy to Cleveland. And it's just they start to add up a little bit. But, that doesn't mean that this team still can't compete.
And I think some of the losses are good losses. I don't think that the Rangers wanted to deal with the media that's surrounding Nelson Cruz after his suspension for PEDs. That really came at the worst time. That kind of sealed his fate that he wasn't going to come back to Texas. And that's why it took him so long to finally get a deal with another team this offseason. So, 2012. They've been hot the past couple years. 2012, 93-69, finishing second in the division. Finishing second in 2013 at 91-72. But what do you see for 2014?
Well, I don't think they're going to be playing an extra game like they did last year. But I don't think that they're the division champions for another year. I have them finishing second with an 89-73 record. I still see them as a wild card team. Just can they continue that step up? Because, like I said, that rotation is solid. You have Yu Darvish, who's a number one guy. Hopefully, for their case, they can get Feliz to be back on track because he's a dangerous pitcher, even if that is just in a bullpen role. And then you look at Alexi Ogando, another guy. If he's healthy, it can be a scary team with this pitching staff. It's just a matter of having all these guys around because they do have that talent.
I mean, I have them going 92 and 70. No, I have them going much better than only 72 wins. I see them finishing second. It's a close race, and I think that they may have injuries throughout the season that may hinder their production down the stretch and cause them to fall just short of clinching the AL West title. But we're heading to the Bay. We're paying a visit to Billy Beane, and what could be better?
Well, I can tell you that their bullpen can't be much better because that was clearly their intention to work on this year because they brought in Jim Johnson in a trade with the Baltimore Orioles where they traded away some prospects, including Jemile Weeks. But Jim Johnson was, for most of the year last year, one of the best closers in baseball. And he can really be a strong back end of this bullpen. And then another guy in their bullpen that they brought in, Luke Gregerson.
Solid with the Padres.
Absolutely. With these two guys, you could be looking at one of the best bullpens in baseball, not just in their division, but I mean in the entire major leagues. Their goal was to make sure that they're not going to lose leads once they get into the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning. They did make a couple other moves with starting pitching. Drew Pomeranz that they got from the Colorado Rockies, and then Scott Kazmir they were able to pick up from the Cleveland Indians. Two guys that could be kind of wild cards in a way. You're not sure necessarily what you can get from them, but there's no reason to think that they don't have the potential to be, maybe a 4th starter, 5th starter and give them 10 to 12 wins, which is really what you want out of your fifth starter.
I mean, they have their bullpen solid. And what's even better is they have a young starting five overall, but they've been doing pretty well for how young they have been, and with the lack of inexperience. But when you take into account that you have Jim Johnson, you go back to their bullpen. You have Jim Johnson closing. You have Luke Gregerson as a middle relief, and you have Ryan Cook, I believe his name, as a setup man. Those are three solid guys, three key guys to look for in the A's bullpen that can go out and you can feel reassured that the majority of the time they're going to go out there, give you their best stuff, lights out performances.
And they have two of the best young starting pitchers in baseball, in my opinion, with Jared Parker and
Sonny Gray.
And Sonny Gray, exactly. Those two guys, they didn't wow anyone last year, but that was because they're young. I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Jared Parker led the team in wins last year. This is going to be a group of pitchers that can either make or break this season because they haven't gotten enough time in the majors. They lost Bartolo Colon, who was a nice guy to have as a surprise pitcher indeed, but really just kind of to be an anchor in terms of leading these young guys. But he's not around anymore, so what do you expect out of the starting rotation after that? I think they're still going to be just fine. But, I mean, you could certainly make an argument that their youth will affect them negatively.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have put themselves in a good situation to improve. 2012, they finished first with a 94-68 record. 13, they finished 96-66, finished first again. But 2014, I don't see anything changing. The end result, they're going to be first. I see them as the strongest team to win the division with a 95-67 record. What about you?
I actually have the exact same record. I think we're still going to see strong offensive production from guys like Brandon Moss, Josh Reddick. The name of their third baseman is escaping me right now.
Brandon Moss?
Donaldson. Josh Donaldson. These are guys that really can take care of the hitting.
And Cespedes, if he bounces back.
If he's got the power, but he's got to be able to hit for average. Their offense will be just fine. They're going to be able to win this division. I have them winning the division by 6 games, relative ease in that case. Get rested for hopefully a playoff run. And although, who's to say that they don't meet the Detroit Tigers for a third straight year in the first round of the playoffs and get knocked off again? That's unfortunately been what they've seen the last couple of years, and it's been unfortunate for them because they're right on the cusp.
I mean, we're gonna review our division picks. So for me, I have the Astros finishing last, 65-97. Mariners fourth, 79-82. Angels finishing 500, 81-81, finishing third. Rangers 92-70, finishing second, and then just going that extra mile. A's finishing first, 95-67.
Well, we had all of our teams that made the playoffs last year had an over 90 wins. So that Rangers pick being in the 90 wins looks pretty promising for them. I have the Astros finishing at 63-99 in fifth. Fourth place, Seattle Mariners 77-85. The Angels will go 82-80 for third place. Texas Rangers 89-73, just missing the 90 win cusp. And then I have the Oakland A's finishing at number 1, 95-67. Chad, I mean, we've been going through some awards here. What are you thinking when it comes to the MVP race?
For the MVP race, I think it comes down to two people. Mike Trout is probably who most people consider a favorite if this was a division by division award. But I can't ignore Robinson Cano. The problem with Robinson Cano is there's a lot that has to happen for him to be up with Mike Trout. He has to have that production from the people around him to help put him in the situations to put up production like Mike Trout. But if I had to choose between the two, I'd have to lean with Mike Trout at this point. What about you?
Well, I struggle with this because, in my opinion, MVP is about the best team. And when I look at the A's, they're my number one team in this division. I didn't see a guy that just jumped out off the page to me and was like, he's having a big year. He's hitting over 30 home runs, batting .320 with 100 RBIs. I didn't see that on there. And then you look at Mike Trout, who's finished second in the entire league MVP award for the last 2 years. You know, like you said, he has to be at least a favorite for this award because of what he can do. But can his team back him up enough where, you know, where they make the playoffs and he can actually win the award? That's the big question mark. Since I don't have them as a playoff team, the guy that I look to in the meantime, I'm going to go with Adrian Beltre of the Texas Rangers. Again, the A's just didn't have that guy that jumped out at me, but I know the Texas Rangers do have some pop. Adrian Beltre has had a great couple of seasons in Texas. I feel like he really enjoys hitting there, and he will once again be able to put together a solid season for them. And I just see him as being, you know, the runaway favorite in terms of my playoff teams for this MVP award.
For Cy Young, it's simple for me. Felix Hernandez. I don't see any other pitcher that's as dominant as him in this division. I believe that he can get 16 wins and 16, 17 wins with maybe 8 or 9 losses, because I really believe that what they've done with this offense, I think they're going to make leaps. And that was a problem with these Seattle pitchers. Is it's not that they were terrible, because they have some solid pitchers, but they don't have the support from their offense to get them those wins. There may be 4 or 5 losses that they're getting because they are getting no support. You give up 1 hit and 1 run or whatever, and you lose. That's heartbreaking. And I mean, I think that Felix Hernandez is going to have an improvement of a year, and definitely Cy Young Award winner for this division. I think give him.
I actually have Felix Hernandez as well. I struggled between 2 pitchers, Yu Darvish and Felix Hernandez. And the way I see it, Yu Darvish will end up with more wins, but at the end of the day, which guy would I rather have? Felix Hernandez. And that's no disrespect to Yu Darvish. It's just the matter that when I think back at Cy Young Award winners, you can't forget that Felix Hernandez won it when he went, I believe, 13-12. He was almost at a 500 record and still won Cy Young because he's that dominant of a pitcher. It's not his fault that his offense would only give him maybe 2 runs a game in terms of support, when he is still giving up 2 to 3 runs a game at most, and you strike out 225 guys. What else can you do? If your guys aren't scoring runs, you can't be expected to shut out the other team every single game. And in the end, when it comes down to it, if I had a 1-game matchup, Seattle versus Texas, Yu Darvish versus Felix Hernandez, I like Felix Hernandez in that matchup, and I would take him for this Cy Young Award of the division.
I totally agree. I would definitely pick him in most matchups against any pitcher in this division, because it goes back to how dominant he is. And we'll see. It's a new season, a lot of possibilities.
You know, what I think maybe not stated enough about this is I think it's actually might be the strongest division in baseball. Outside of the Houston Astros, you look at Seattle, who could be a playoff team in some other divisions just because of the fact that they have made some good improvements, but they play with 3 teams ahead of them that are loaded with talent. And then same thing with the Angels. If they play in, you know, say the NL East, for example, especially with this coming year, you might see a team that makes the playoffs. And I have the Rangers and A's making the playoffs in this case. So I just think this is going to be a really exciting division just because of how much talent we'll be seeing from this division. You know, this is going to be a fun year in the end, no matter what happens.
Oh, yeah.
All right, guys, just thanks for listening once again. Be sure to check out our Facebook page. It's the Chad and Sam Sports Hour, and that's and is an ampersand. Be sure to find us on Twitter. That's Chad Sam Sports HR. Make sure you find us there. Tweet at us. Tell us what you think about everything. And then check out our blog where we're doing some written pieces as well as posting our podcasts on there. And that's ChadandSamSportsHR.wordpress.com. For Chad Train, I'm Sam Mullen. Thank you guys for once again listening. Have a good one.